Okay, it's giving me live with an exclamation mark in the middle of the screen, but we're not going to trust only that. We're going to wait for signs of life, Ben, before we start talking. I was just explaining to Ben in the past, I used to press live and I used to start rambling on to only find 3 minutes in that it's only just started recording. And then I'd have to repeat myself and look like an absolute idiot. So now I decide to delay a little bit, talk a little bit of shit just to make sure that we have ironed out all the tech bug issues. How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, I'm well. Things are pretty good. I'm up on the Central Coast, so not as full on as Sydney is these days, or even Melbourne, quite right at the moment.
I
Yeah,
know the shit's getting real down in Melbourne, isn't it?
shit is getting very real in Melbourne. Yeah, so
Well, you're looking all
mm,
official because you've got your headphones in, so it looks like that you're ready to go. We might just wait a couple of more seconds for signs of life. Looks like we're starting to get some people joining on, so let's get a start. So, without further ado, let's get into this Dad Bod Project exclusive with my special guest, Mr. Ben. I didn't ask how I pronounce your last name, Ben. I maybe should have done that before I pressed the live button, but I'm going
all
to take
good.
a tab on it and think it might be yeah.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah, all right.
yeah,
My
yep.
special guest, Mr. Ben Gair, is joining us this evening. So, Ben, thank you so much for your time and for your patience for
Yeah,
organizing this chat. And to give you an idea, you've been in my audience for a little bit now. Now, I only work with men, predominantly fathers. So I'd love to have a chat with you around what advice you could give to that kind of audience and that group of people, knowing that it's obviously we're both men, so we can bounce off some ideas. But ultimately, I thought it would be cool if we could get you on, knowing a little bit about your history. I won't disclose that because I don't want to steal your introduction. But knowing a little bit about your history, it kind of resonated me. There was quite a few things that did resonate with me, and I thought that you would be able to provide lots of value to our audience and to the boys that are going to be watching in on this. So again, thank you so much. And if you just want to introduce yourself, Ben, and take the floor is yours.
thanks, man. Yeah, my name's Ben Gair, and yeah, I don't know. I've been probably around the personal development space pretty officially now for about 20 years. Um, and it certainly didn't start from a desire to want to do that as a job. That's for sure. I came from a sort of background of heavy metal, drugs, the works, like on the extreme side of things, shall we say. And it kind of all came to the point of me having a few overdoses and issues with suicide, to the point where I got to having to have a look at why I wanted to check out of this place so much, and as very male driven but male dominated fields of sort of bikers and drugs and heavy metal. I saw a lot of it and I was surrounded by a lot of it, and it was more of an escape place as opposed to encouragement to have a look at why, so um, for whatever reason, I knew that sort of I had problems, but I didn't know even where to begin or who to ask, who to talk to. It was always hide yourself in booze and things like that, because it just wasn't in the circles. It wasn't in the men's groups I was in at the time. It was not considered. People did not want to know your feelings and what was actually really going on for you. So we all just covered it up with whatever we did, And it really got to the point where if I wanted to keep going and keep surviving and keep living in reality, that I needed to have a look. And so one of the first things I got into was breath work and counselling. And it all kind of started from there. So I kind of took many tangents along that road of looking into sexuality. So I became a somatic touch therapist and a massage therapist and a few other things. Counseling, a few energetic works, and plant medicines and psychedelics have also played a big part in my role along the way as well. So as a quick sort of intro, that's a little bit. I'm happy to hone in on any parts of those stories and give more details, but as a kind of of an overview of where I was to where I choose to be now in terms of tackling my demons as opposed to sort of feeding them and forgetting about it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's thank you so much for sharing. I mean, there's a million different avenues that we can go down with just a couple of seconds of that story, but I really appreciate you sharing some of that story. And that's, I think, what's so cool is that we all have a story, we all have a journey, we all have come from different places because of different reasons. Now, I think I would like to go down the rabbit hole of talking about why it is, because I think this is something that is very important to discuss, especially nowadays for our audience that are watching from Australia, especially if they're on the east coast of Australia, going through the whole lockdowns, and especially with men and the levels of mental health that are ever so climbing with the rates of it. Why is it that you think that we hide from our traumas, hide from the challenges, hide from reality, so to speak, as men?
Because it's hard work. I think inherently by nature, I think men have the built background story of, like big boys don't cry, or, it's not, we're not often encouraged to share what's going on for us, speak our feelings, like have deeper moments with people we're around all the time, but maybe don't really share with, And I think that's just an inherent flaw or strength on some levels in the male, like, psyche in general, wherever it is, So, did I answer that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important that more of this stuff is addressed, and it's interesting that you said, and I believe this to be true as well, is that we men are raised to believe that it's not okay to show emotions. It's not okay to be sad, and we have this almost expectation on us to always be in the problem solvers, and always to be the ones that have all the answers. And I think, I understand from our parents' perspective is they are just going by their learnt behavior with how they were parented from their parents, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important that we bring more awareness with the next generation as parents, is that we start to encourage our children, especially our male children, to understand that it's not a sign of weakness to show signs of emotion. It's actually a signs of strength to be able to express emotions. And, it's funny though, because we all are born as children, we grow up into teens, and probably before we become teenagers, kids have no problems with expressing emotions. I mean, they'll cry like whenever they get sad. Like, you will know that they get sad. They don't absorb it in. They don't try to decompress it in some part of their brain.
They express
let
it
out
and release it.
They express and they release it, and somewhere along the line of our development, as we go from children to teens to adults, we start to lose this gift that we were given, which is to be able to express our emotions. And we start to collect these belief systems that it's not okay to show emotions, and it's not okay to be sad, and you're a man, so you need to toughen up. I don't know if it's just an Aussie thing, that she'll be right kind of mate, like have a teaspoon of cement and harden up. Like, I don't know if that's just an Australian thing, But what are your thoughts on that
I,
and
I,
this whole
I,
culture that we've created?
I mean, I think it's an inherently human male thing. I think we'd all have like iterations around the world, like different ways that's expressed, and ours is should be right or type thing. But in subtle different ways, I think every culture has a version of it on some level. Um, that's just a guess. You know, that's my experience having traveled quite a bit and stuff like that. And I definitely recognize that. I grew up only child with a very sports dad, like a very into fucking football and all the kind of rest of it. And I just took off after my mum, who was an artist, and so I was like deeply sensitive, deeply like emotional, and um, always made wrong for it by my dad. And like he said things to me like, "I'm ashamed you're my son because you don't like football. You don't like to watch football on TV." I was like, but I don't understand how that's like a helpful thing of creating, you know.
I don't think that's helpful.
No, it's not really helpful, you know. So being shamed for being whatever I knew as my expression of self,
Being
you know,
different.
and this and I got picked on at school, and I was kind of always the shy, nerdy one, and completely bullied and all that kind of stuff. So um, I think that's where when I got to my lead, and I was like went to an all boys Catholic high school, which I totally didn't agree with. Catholicism, I came out as a pretty much the only kid in the school as an atheist at like 13, and said I really don't want to do this, but I'm stuck here, so we're all gonna have to get along with it. And I think as I left school, and we had no sister schools, so we had no girls, no nothing. So I was kind of in this really isolated world of not knowing much other experience than kind of the one that I was in, and not really feeling like I fitted as a man, whatever that is, you know. And that's why when I came out of school and became my own adult self, it was, I need hard to fuck up right now because I ain't going to let that shit happen to me again, you know. So I did go down the darker paths, and I did go into dangerous areas where I've had my life threatened more than a few times, um, as a challenge to self of like, I can take on whatever I can take on, you know. And it was the unhealthy way. It was kind of like a rebellion against, as opposed to a healthily integrated, now I'm strong and I can stand up for myself. It was just a reaction to always having been told to be something that I'm not, or something like that, you know. So and I didn't want to be in that place of weakness or on the back foot anymore. It was just like, become bulletproof, because, you know, yeah, it was what I needed to do to get through the world I was in. Um, and I loved that world. You know, not, there was no bones about it. I've had more joy in music and all of those things. I've worked in film industry, I worked in horror movies, worked in all these kind of like dark places, and it was not in any kind of fear of what was. It was just, I found it quite liberating for me. But it was not the path that was kind of laid out or expected of me as the only son from a father, you know. And I walked away from a very wealthy company because my dad was again grooming me to be the next CEO. And I just went at 18. I'm like, oh, well, no, I don't want to do that, you know. So again, it was like not spoken to for years because of it. You know, yet I'm the only person that's available for the conversation. So there was a lot of kind of strange things that I didn't understand, because I've never kind of really understood this expectation part that I'm supposed to be something. Well, I am what I am, you know. So um, as I say, I think going into the therapy side of things, it started to make me realize that, yeah, the gifts and the strengths in being vulnerable or owning my emotions and having inner strength to say what I want or do what I want to do, or have the warrior within me that goes for things and does what's necessary when needed, but not having that as the blunt hammer that knocks everything down because that's the only tool I've got, So, yeah.
Well, I mean, good on you for not going down that path of what your father wanted you to be and what he wanted you to become, because I would dare to say that plenty of children are forced upon them the values of their parents, of their father, on down onto their son to do and be a particular person, and go into a particular industry for work and for business. And I'm a firm believer that's usually when someone that has been forced down that path that they didn't want to go to sometimes gets to 40 and 50 and has a complete freak out, has a midlife crisis, leaves his wife, and just goes
100%.
and buys a Harley and a speedboat and takes off to Mexico.
100%. 100%. I kind of always say that, like, I almost killed myself living the life that I really wanted to live, at 18 to 20, whatever. And I'm like, imagine if I had given up being myself to do something I hated even more. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that I would have been either completely numbed out and totally in that place where I've got a wife and kids and I'm hating it, I'm cheating, I'm fucking doing drugs on the side, and all this kind of weird shit that fucking goes on out there and considered normal because it's no one's taken the responsibility or the balls to do it in the way they wanted to in the first place, so it's a bit of an ironic kind of double standard that kind of goes on there, that it's like, oh yeah, well, you're being the man by doing the thing, but then you're not being true to yourself, so there's a lot there that and it was not a kind of a fuck you rebellious thing as such. It was just, I didn't want a desk job, and I majored in art and woodwork and computers and kind of all stuff like that at school, and I dropped out of business in early on. It was like, why was I going to go get an office job? Like it just totally didn't. I'm like, have you met me? Like, it's like, I know I'm only like 17, 18, but it just didn't fit for me. So yeah, I ended up going to art college and stuff like that. So yeah, I just found, and then to be pissed off at me for it, when he wasn't, because the way it even happened was my mum came to me and she said, "You don't want the company, do you?" And I'm like, "What are you even talking about?" Like, she's like, "I'll tell your dad." Like, he didn't even he's like expecting you to go to business school when you leave school and stuff like that, and that'll be it, and then you'll just come and be CEO of the company and take over. I was like, what? I didn't even know this was a conversation, because it was never one that was had with me. It was like, how long has he been holding on to this thing for? Because it wasn't for me, it was for him. It's like, I'm happy he did his thing, and I'm happy, but it's definitely led to a lot of backlash since.
And I think it's important that a lot of people come to the realization that if they hold on to like money and cars and possessions and stuff to dictate their level of happiness or their level of self-worth, then it's always that fleeting feeling, because they get to a certain amount of money and then they think that that is going to do something for them, and then they want more, and then they get to there, and then it's just like trying to chase a rabbit in it, and they never end up getting to the place of fulfillment, because they're externally validating their level of self-worth based on their material. That's it, the material possessions that they have.
Yeah. Because there's been no time put into building self, and I get it. If you're working a 40 to 60 hour week, or building an empire of something, whatever you want to do, you're too tired to kind of sometimes figure out. If you never figured out who you were, you're just now filling it with things. You know what I mean? Like it's, and this is why I've delayed having kids and things in life, because not because I don't want them, it's because I've been trying to figure out who the hell I am and what do I want and what am I doing, and how do I give back? How do I share? And how do I create my own thing? And that's just taken time. And we've all had fuck ups and things like that. So,
We sure have, mate. We sure
yeah,
have.
yeah, like, but no one's exempt from that bit. So, like, we just go on. So, yeah.
So you talked about at the start when we first started chatting how you were in a really dark place. You had severe levels of depression and your mental health wasn't doing the best. Talk to me, and this is something that's always really fascinating. Of what was that defining moment, or was there a defining day, or was there a defining thought that you had all those years back where you started to want to that you knew and you had this yearning that things needed to be better and you wanted things to be better and you wanted to get your life back on track? Because no doubt I'm sure you felt like your life was not on track for a long time. So what was actually happening, and how did you go about that? Because I think that's worth unpacking.
Okay, it's a bit of an odd story. um, yeah, I was very much very atheistic, very again having kind of grown up with not a strict Catholic background, but a bit of one. Um, and then going to an all boys Catholic brothers school, so quite strict there as well. And then being atheist, I was very irreligious and very no belief in anything. And I don't have any denomination now. I'm not saying that I have my own beliefs, but I don't follow anything specifically. Um, and that's what was leading me to you have one life, you rot, you die, let's get fucked up and have fun. It was just kind of that mentality and escaping, going to those darker places, going to the bits that I didn't want to go to. And I knew that if I went to the doctors, they would have given me a handful of pills and said, well, you're going to be on these for the rest of your life probably, and you've got some label, which I didn't really believe in either. Um, and I just saw it as like a band-aid on an artery that was not going to be fixing the problem and just kind of slowly numbing me out or bleeding me out. And I just went, well, my drugs are better, so I'd rather stick with that. At least I can enjoy mine. Whereas I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy anything after that lot. So yeah, it was just a bunch of synchronistic events that when I was really at my darkest, I had someone die, friend die, just things. I was just hitting a pretty bad rock bottom, and it meeting up with an old friend who I just used to like smoke pot and watch horror movies with, and I was kind of talking to him about how dark things were getting, and he's like, "Oh, I know what you mean, and I totally get where you're coming from." He's like, "I think you should try this modality that I do, which was a breathwork thing," and and I'm just like, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever. That sounds just weird. I don't know if that's really where I'm at," and kind of sounded a bit pseudo spiritual, religious kind of thing, and I'm like, "Oh, this is a bit, I don't know." And then he told me I had to be off the beers for 3 days before doing it. I'm like, oh, geez, all right, okay, fuck, we're in for something here. And it it really was one of the most eye-opening experiences I'd ever had. Really, I think without drugs. Um, it's so the kind of the principle is that it drops the subconscious mind, certain kind of cyclical breathings, drops the subconscious mind so that you can tap the subconscious and go through and find where memories or ideas begin. So is this I'm not lovable, or I'm like I don't deserve, or I'm not worthy. They're just kind of spitball ideas of and where early trauma lies. So it's a kind of hypnotic regression type therapy type thing. And I just went, I couldn't believe how much I had like videos of early childhood stuff coming through and then being counseled through the whole process and unraveling things and then watching my external reality change because I had a new relationship to the beginning of what these things are. Because I think we're such a sponge in early ages, we take on beliefs that are not necessarily true. They're just misinterpretations of what reality is because we don't have the framework to actually get what the hell is happening around us in the world, you know? And so I got hooked like a good addict. I got hooked on this thing going, yeah, give me more breath work, you know, because it was like, I knew if I had just like conscious counseling, like normal counseling, I had to use my mind, and I knew my mind wasn't wanting to go there. But by using the breath techniques, it kind of put me into a hypnotic state where I was open to seeing other things. And that fascinated me. And as I say, I did a heap of sessions straight up and then jumped straight into a training and became a facilitator. Took me a year training plus a counseling course to get a grasp on what the hell was actually going on with it. And it's still a weird one. It's still unexplainable in very many ways. But I have a greater and plus. I mean, I'd had sort of a bit of LSD before, which I'd always kind of really liked. And it was that kind of, the first breath work was that kind of experience of like, what the hell was that? Because it was like the highest I'd ever been and I was completely sober. And it made me reevaluate, what is life? If breath does that to you, what is creation? What is life? What is the meaning of things, you know? Which again, psychedelics have a place in that as well, which I've worked with for 25 odd years. And they're sort of the beautiful external way to induce a similar kind of thing. But yeah, there's a beautiful discipline that has to come about because the breathing is very, very intense and all that kind of stuff. And add that to some legit counselling because it became a recognised therapy in Australia a while ago. And in the proposals to the government, it was like, well, we want to kind of pass this breathwork thing and we don't really understand it. There is no understanding for the mechanism of what's actually going on here. But if you've got a counselling degree, then we'll just pass it off as the kind of little bit that, you know what I mean? Like, you're safe to walk with people, you know? So it was kind of all that got it passed as a legitimate sort of therapy, that we're actually just counsellors at the end of the day. But it really helped. And I've seen it just with so many people that, again, if you were just to use your mind and it's then reliant on you being open, you know, it's being open to talking about stuff. And that only came for me a lot later because I started to teach it and all that kind of stuff. But before then, I was too closed to even know what the hell you were talking about. And I was blocking it from myself even. So it was not like
as a form of protection.
Totally. And that's what it helped break down for me. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I don't even know what the question is, but that was cool.
How did it begin? Yeah,
that was cool to chat. And you know, it's funny. I think it was about 7 years ago. I invested a shitload of money to go on a personal development retreat, and I think it was over 4 or 5 days where we stayed on site in the cabin and all of that. And like from start to finish, it was just like stuff that I've never ever considered doing before. And one of the things, and this is what has brought me back to when you were talking about it, is this. We did this. I can't even explain it. And like you would be able to understand when I say this. We did this breathwork exercise that I thought went for 20 minutes, and we were doing it for like 5 hours. And like it was a partnered version, and then it involved like yelling and just like like it's like even if I describe it now, what went on, like I probably don't even believe me talking about it. For someone else to hear that, they'd be like, what are these guys talking about? But I mean, it was a really, really profound experience, like one that I even have trouble explaining of how I felt. But I certainly did, after that, start to understand that there is so much that we don't know. Number one, that's what I'm like, dude, we don't know anything about anything. No. And then the second thing was like what you mentioned, if we can achieve certain states of consciousness with just doing something as simple as breathing, which is what we do all the time, what else are we capable of doing? And like, that's what got me really hooked on personal development. And that's when I started to want to kind of do more research into breath work. And I actually did a bit of research into the Wim Hof method of breathing, the Iceman. So what is this breathing that you actually did that gave you these transformations?
It's just basically cyclical breath. So that there's no, there's all different kinds. I've studied a bunch of them, but the method that we do, sometimes it's like box breath. So it's like in for 5, up, hold for 5, out for 5, hold for 5, different kind of timings or things like that. Ours is just simply like, as soon as it's in, you're out, in, out, in, out. So do that for, quite a while. And look, your experience of workshops and stuff is stuff I've probably done several thousand workshops now where I've been facilitator for different kinds of stuff. And again, I'm hungry for information too. I'm like, and I wouldn't just stop it. Again, I'm not the kind of person you tell me this is how it is and I just believe it. I have to have my own experience of it, and I'm kind of really curious now. And so it went down again. It was not a desire to become this personal development. Well, God no. Having lived in an ashram for a while and been like super dedicated to that path, I've spent kind of. I find that I spend 2-3 years in certain modalities and to really embody them as a kind of a practice. So meditating with an enlightened master and all that kind of stuff has been part of it. Mind, body, spirit, working on each one for a few years and really dedicating to getting really clean healthily, or getting really meditative, or doing breath work and stuff like that. So I've chased a bunch of modalities, and I'm now kind of just like work with the ones that I know work best for me. So, I mean, it's not much more complicated than connecting the inhale and the exhale. For breath, it's just as if it was that, if we knew what our problems were, if it was that simple, we'd already have done it. You know what I mean? So, obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that. And generally when your stuff, when your blocks, your issues, your capacity for looking at a certain issue starts to come to the surface, you start to go unconscious. And that can be from falling asleep to literally passing out. So you really need someone there, like, who's just like, keep breathing, keep breathing, keep breathing, keep breathing, keep breathing. So it's annoying, and you snap, and there's yelling and all kinds of stuff like that. And certainly to be a fly on the wall of some workshops I've been part of, it's not a sales pitch at that point, and not used as your advertising campaign. But again, I've seen too many good results to deny that it has an effect, and that we don't know what much is. and especially the brain.
Do you know what's funny about it all, Ben? It's almost like, we've got all these challenges and these traumas that we've built up over the years. So in our minds, I think we develop this belief system that because our challenges and our traumas are so complex, then that means the way that we heal these traumas is something really big, really grand, really long-taking, really complex as well. And I mean, that, of course, is just the belief system that we've told ourselves. And I think that's why a lot of people initially myself included, if I didn't go through that breath work and feel the profound feelings that I felt that day, I would have just completely dismissed it as well as just, oh, this is crap, this doesn't work, this doesn't do that. But I think it's important that if people understand, if they just suspend their belief on on what works and what doesn't, then if they are open, like you mentioned, then there's so much potential for healing and fast healing as well. I mean, it doesn't need to drag on for a long time, you know.
Yeah, and that's why I started to diversify, because I always saw sort of breath work as a bit of a sledgehammer. It was great for getting a lot done in a very quick, like shifting your energy into a different place or a different kind of mindset very, very quickly. But continually long term, it just wasn't, at least the way that I was doing it or I was trained, was not as sustainable or enjoyable. You know, it got really like hard work or really full on, and then your time for integration was like too long maybe, and stuff like that. So so even getting into sexuality was like, oh my God, this is a beautiful way to process emotions or to move through things, or, you know, where it's not just looking at where my traumas begin, you know, and undigging all that up and then having to process that as an idea. Or plant medicines is another one where it's like you're taken to beyond a place where your mind is thinking about going, and does it in a way, if you can surrender to that, which is a very profound experience. And actually the plants that I've got the most experience with are actually the same chemicals the body is producing when you do breath work. So that's a really fascinating fact, which again, I had awareness of early on, but the scientific research wasn't even done yet. And then when it finally was done, it was like, oh, I knew that, because when I first started having certain kinds of psychedelics later, I'm like, this is the same place I go with breath work. And then the science came out to actually back that up, that you're producing one of the chemicals in your brain and your body, particularly in your lungs when you breathe. So.
Yeah, right. So, and you know, I think it's quite unfortunate that drugs like psilocybin and psychedelics, like you were talking about, have copped a bit of a bad rap. Obviously, when they started to be introduced in the 60s and the 70s, and people were going to raves and all of that, that's where I think LSD and psychedelics started copping a bad rap. And then we had the whole Reagan government going on about drugs are bad and just say no, just say no. And I think, unfortunately, people are very quick to dismiss these kinds of drugs, but at the same time, they'll be more than happy to take paracetamol. They'll be more than happy to take Nurofen. They'll be more than happy, just because it came in a box with your name on it, that it's somehow different.
From down to antidepressants and all kinds of stuff, you know, and thankfully the world is starting to come around again. And well, interestingly enough as well, one of the main guys he was an LSD therapist in the 60s. I forget his name, is just escaping me right this moment. It'll probably come. No. Anyway, he when LSD got made illegal, he went, well, how do I still work with clients? Stanislav Grof. How do I work with clients now that I can't give them LSD? And he created one of the forms of breath work that I've trained in. You know, so he realized that there was a bridge there, and there was a lot that Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, was written recently, which is really good. We need more people that are on the clinical side that are not into drugs. And I think he was talking about food most of his career. And he's 50 odd and never done drugs before, and went and did X amount of ceremonies with different kinds of medicines. And wrote this book of the whole history of kind of psychedelics. And he goes into how much psychology has stagnated since the 70s, because we have not evolved at all. Yet the understanding of the brain from the 50s to the 70s was gigantic because of the use of LSD, and they were able to study it and all that kind of stuff, you know. And so I haven't taken a synthetic chemical in 20 years, so I'm not interested in drugs. I'm not, including LSD. You know, like if it's a plant that grows on the earth, then I'll take it. It's fine. But after that, like I don't even take a Panadol if I've got a headache, you know. So it's just where I've personally come to in my experience, and there's obviously a place for modern medicine, but it's just how I choose to function as my choice, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing that we're starting to see real academics coming out and talking about the benefits of psychedelics and LSD, because I think that's what that's what society needs. They need to be almost given that validation, because if it was someone kind of like wearing like, you know, Rastafarian looking guy talking about the benefits of LSD, then I don't think it's going to be as socially accepted as someone that's been in the Johns Hopkins University,
Totally.
you know, with 30 years of academia behind him. So I feel glad to see that there is real academic professionals that are getting behind the benefits, the psychological benefits that are coming from psychedelics and drugs and stuff. And, you know, I'm sure you know this as well. I recently was listening to a podcast talking about how they have not introduced, or how they've been using LSD and psychedelics for the treatment of PTSD in
Yep.
war veterans of in America, and people that were in a very, very bad way. In a few short treatments, they managed to almost reverse so much of their traumas, of their PTSD, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I was probably going with that, and I got sidetracked somewhere along the line of it's starting to become fairly undeniable that there is a huge benefit going on. And like, I think they have psilocybin treatments. They're talking about an efficacy of about 70%, which is probably higher than what you can say for most antidepressants, you know. So that's where,
Without the side effects as well.
without the side, and we're talking a few treatments. We're not talking like you have to take them and like they're 100% non-addictive. Your tolerance builds so quickly to it. You couldn't take it every day if you wanted to, because it's just not possible. And yeah, we hear all these bad stories, but they're less common than actually is known. But you know, it can happen. But yeah, there's finally some research being, as some places have opened up to decriminalizing it, at least. Parts of America are decriminalizing it for research now, so that's finally a good thing, we can start to actually have a look at what it's doing, because once it's illegal, it also can't be studied in medicine, which is the tragedy of it, you know. So yeah, I think we're going to see some very interesting future of mental health coming in the next sort of 10 years, as maybe we start to open to the idea of assisted psychotherapy with psychedelics is going to be definitely part of it, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was talking about MDMA treatment, as well as LSD, as well as psychedelics as well. And I think he was saying that he thinks it's between 3 to 5 years away from getting FDA
Yep.
approval. I mean, and that's really exciting to hear, because I think once it becomes more socially accepted, like imagine how many lives are going to be saved of PTSD, people really suffering very badly with PTSD, and
Totally.
ultimately sadly taking their life as well. So I mean, the quicker that we can get these kind of treatments and get the social acceptance of it as well, you know, I think that's an
Yeah,
important one.
it's going to be it's going to be interesting, because again, sometimes we know that pharmaceutical companies like to put the brakes on a few of these things as well, because the profits are not there for some of it, you know. So offering alternative treatments get waylaid a little bit sometimes when we actually do have good evidence for it. I was going somewhere with that before I went there, but I forget. It's totally slipped my mind in this moment why I was talking about that. But yeah, I look for. Oh well, I think what opened the door was sort of the legalization of cannabis, just probably where I was starting with that, because
Yeah.
and that's why I got into the pharmaceutical industry, because there've been ones lobbying against a lot of the legalized cannabis in certain states of America, because they had invested interest they had really high heroin rates, or synthetic heroin, so oxytocins and stuff like that. So they were actually known to be campaigning against it, which is just criminal. It's like, because they knew that the rates of depression, the rates of alcoholism and other substance abuse went down when cannabis was legal in certain states. So they didn't really want that. So it was like lobbying against getting it. And it's not in the realms of psychedelics, but it's certainly in the realms of a more natural substance that has known benefits over other things. So.
Yeah, and I think it's worth also noting that people are going to take it one way or the other, whether it's legal
Totally.
or it's not. And the problem is, when it becomes illegal, then obviously it becomes more unsafe as far as the quality goes. Who knows what it's been mixed with, and all of that as well.
Totally. Like, it was Portugal was the great example of the country that decriminalized everything. And I've always kind of supported that idea, because one, you get to regulate what's going into it. So if someone has a problem, they know how to treat it straight away. So down to paramedics, to doctors that have clinics that help support it, to support their mental health side of it, to taxes. The amount of money that the American states that have legalized cannabis is pulling in is phenomenal.
Definitely. Now, I want to dive into, without blowing out to hours and hours, because I feel that we could continue. We could continue. I told you this would happen. Oh, Ben. Ben, have we lost you? Ben has just disappeared. Let's.
Am I back?
Ben.
Hey. No idea what happened there.
I was starting to talk to myself. I'm like, oh, I got the stage all on my own. Ben's disappeared.
They're onto us. They're shutting us down, man. They don't want this mental health stuff going on.
We got you.
We can't have healthy, sane people out there. Like, come on.
I reckon, man, they're monitoring our chat. They don't like where this is going.
Yeah.
So this is a good segue to change the conversation. And what I do want to dive into, and this is an awesome one that I love talking about, because it makes people a little bit awkward, because we are raised to not talk about this. Well, I don't know about you, but the idea of sex and sexuality is something that, dude, when I was raised, it's like we can't even hear the word sex. We don't talk about the word sex. It's like if a scene on TV came up that had people having sex, or even kissing, or even getting intimate with one another, it was like, It's like, and I used to get awkward as well, because the whole energy of the room just shifted, and it was like, oh my God, can this scene just please be over, right? So that's my experience of sex, and I'm sure that there's plenty of people that can resonate with the same thing growing up in a Catholic household. Now, it's not until I actually met my wife, Melissa, who had come from the almost other side of the spectrum, where it was like spoken about freely at a dinner table, and sexuality was not something that was taboo, and sexuality wasn't something that was awkward. And to be honest with you, when Melissa and I first started dating, it was funny, because I was still super awkward about talking about it, and and it's not until obviously we continued dating that I started to become a little bit less awkward, especially when I moved out as well, and that just became a normal kinds of conversations, to now, like, I can freely talk about it, which I'm happy about. But it's what's sad is that men, when they become married, tend to almost wear this badge of honor, and they kind of think that it's a good thing, and it's almost masking tragedy with comedy, where they'll joke around the lack of sex that they're having with their wife, the lack of sex that just goes on. And because I've done a lot of work on myself and on personal development, have understood that that's a real big problem in a relationship when there's lack of sex, because
Absolutely.
for a woman to not want to have sex with a man is not a coincidence, and that's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. And this is what I've said quite a bit in my content, is that men like to almost joke around this massive tragedy of their relationship not being in a place where sex is abundant, which is a huge problem. So let's go now diving into sexuality and what your thoughts are on this, and what can be done and what you think should be done.
Oh God. Okay, where do we start there?
It's a loaded question.
Totally, I'm totally up for it. It's just where to begin with it. It's
do you agree that you hear in conversations a lot of men joking around the fact that they forgot what sex sounds like, they forgot what sex was, like I've heard one where they wear thongs to have that slapping noise to remind them of what the sound of sex is. And I mean, it's all these kinds of jokes, and I just think like that's not a good thing.
It's not healthy at all.
It doesn't make you a comedian. Doesn't make you funny. Like if you go and like parade around you having lack of sex and you haven't had sex with your wife in 3 years, like that's not a good thing.
No. I think we're inherently sexual beings, and if it's not expressed in a healthy way, even if it's not penetrative sex, but at least explored healthily, can lead to all kinds of distortions. It can lead to, again, normalizing something that shouldn't be normalized, or taking out that energy in other weird ways, like addiction to porn or something like that, as being an alternative, which again, it's just not. Like it's just not the healthy way to be dealing with it. And this comes back to what we kind of started with in terms of men not being open with their emotions, or men not being open to dialogue, because it's too hard. It's like, because you'd have to be vulnerable, and that's kind of a thing that men shy away from a bit. We've
got another psychologist in. Sorry for cutting you off, but this is important. Marcus Whelan, he's one of the boys in the group, and he actually has done a fair few video podcasts with me like we're doing tonight, and he actually said that men showing vulnerability is their superpower. So I mean, that was a really 100%. Interesting way. That was an interesting way for him to say that.
Yeah, 100%. No, men would probably, most men's initial reaction would be it's a weakness, but it's actually your superpower. I guarantee you would get further, especially with women, in being vulnerable than I've been fucking terrified of a woman, absolutely someone I've just like met who's stunning, and you just go, oh fuck, I'm just gonna have to go up and tell her, and I have, and it actually gets you so much further. Not coming from the angle of like I'm gonna use that to get somewhere, but just literally go, fuck, I'm actually like, I get all tongue-tied and mumble around you, and I'm like, I'm fucking really sorry because I'm actually just think you're stunning, and I'm like, I don't know what to do because I'm like, I'm generally kind of a shy person. It's like not my norm to do this, and she goes, oh god, and it all melts, and you're like, oh yeah. So it's 100%. It is 100% a superpower, and not just for women, but just for your own personal power and personal, whether you want to channel that into getting fit or making money or whatever it is, I think the more we can get into that it's okay and embrace it, the more we can actually achieve, We
got
back to sexuality.
We've got some words of encouragement for our brother Patrick Hong. Let's go, Daniel and Ben. But so tell me about, why is it that we develop this belief system that it's okay to not have sex, and when you get married, the sex ends, and where did it all begin?
Where it begins, I have no idea. But again, it's. I think it's just the older we get, everybody gets more stuck in their ways. You know what I mean? Like, just if you're not actively choosing to break down limiting beliefs or bad psychology or whatever it is, whatever habitual patterns of thinking that you have that are not serving you and not in terms of not driving you forward, um, things in life will naturally cause you to change thinking patterns, like careers and businesses, relationships. I pretty much consider the two biggest ones outside of therapy. It's like they're the ones that naturally cause you to take another step in a different direction, you know, or challenge your habitual known patterns that have been passed down or you see on TV or whatever the hell, you know, like stuff like that. So I think, like, you imagine all the grumpy old couples that are fucking nagging at each other and not being connected and God knows forever. You know, it's like they clearly hate each other, but it's probably also back to this, you know, old stigma of, you know, you've got to stick it out. You know, when probably it was not a good idea in the first place. You know, it is like should have ended a long time ago, but it's not culturally acceptable, or like you're doing what's to be done. Again, it's not challenging the norms, and so that's probably about the origins, I would say, of the mentality. But again, that's a choice. If you're down that path, that's a choice that you're. And again, there's only a few ways out of it. Is like a loveless marriage, or the likelihood of cheating just goes up exponentially by that point. So
because either way, someone's going to want to have their needs met.
totally, yeah, and that's why I say either things are expressed healthily or they're expressed unhealthily. You know, so. And again, even if it's just you trying to connect, even if it doesn't amount in sex, making an effort, and certainly after years and after kids and everything that does happen, that becomes more challenging sometimes. But that's when dedicated effort needs to come in, you know, of going, hey, we're still going to have a date night. We're still going to have,
Yeah.
and again, if it's not the end goal is not necessarily sex, but it's intimacy, you know,
Yeah.
but then intimacy can lead to sex, you know, so, and this is part of guys' psychology too. And again, I even think of it as like the great analogy of ejaculation. Like we have an end point. It's like, we want to kind of get there as quick as possible. That's it. You know, like it's like, yep, cool, I'm done.
Spread our seeds and then disappear into the sunset.
Totally. And that to me is actually not the point. And I personally went into sexuality. Well, I was actually a virgin until I was 26.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Look at you now, sexual facilitator.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because I as I say, came out of all boys Catholic high school, didn't know how to talk to women, so I was completely fucking weird, and I was a bit strange anyway. And
did you have hair back then?
Yeah, like down to my ass and fucking permanently in black, and I just like off my face all the time. You know, I was pretty much never sober, so you know, girls are going,
I wonder why.
What the fuck is with this guy? Yeah, and because I didn't have the healthy upbringing, being around at least women, there was also this like unspoken weirdness. Well, I had an agenda, you know,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much the killer for men as well.
And women are pretty good at seeing that.
And that's, you know, that's the killer for men, and that's part. Like, this is what I was saying about sort of ejaculation being the great analogy for that. It's like, as soon as there's a destination, you're not in the moment anymore. You've left being present, and the intimacy has got very few places to go. You know, it's like if you're just going like, oh, I just want to fuck, like that's the end goal. That's easy, but it's not really the point. You know, especially
Yeah.
in a long-term relationship. Anyway,
And
um,
and if I can add to that, Ben, I think that's where us men, because we do have that ingrained kind of ejaculate, make babies, and then kind of leave kind of thing about us, that I think we have so much value to learn from a woman who they don't come from that. They're not like on and off like men are, as far as they're wanting to have sex. Like we're literally like a flicking of a pen. Whereas a woman, I always joke around with Melissa, like I need to have check the humidity outside it needs to be between a certain amount. I need to make sure that I do the dishes. I make sure that I do the vacuuming. I make sure I cuddle her 7 times a day,
totally,
and then I've ticked 17 things on the checklist, and then the woman is interested in having sex. Whereas like us men are like, man, I don't care. You can punch me in the face, and then half an hour later, I'll still want to have sex with you.
Totally, and that's like that, and that's it. Like it's learning that they're always going to be slow burns, even if some of them are not. Like that, they may be quite hypersexual as well. They probably will have because energies tend to balance. So if they're hypersexual, the guy might be like a slow burn. Yeah. So yeah, there is inherently differences, and yes, the biggest foreplay is doing the dishes. You know, and that's just how it is. Yeah.
We need to make that. We need to make that a book title.
So yeah, just understanding that having an agenda, especially for guys, having an agenda, having a place to get to is the only reason you're doing something is kind of not the right place to come from. Like, or you're only cuddling because you want to lead it to sex. You know what I mean? You cuddle because you want to actually do it. And again, you might have to do 7, like you said before. You could get there, but you know, I know that's still doing something to do. But the more you can reduce a goal, an outcome,
what's in it for me.
Yeah, because you're still going to squirt in 2 minutes, and it's all over anyway. So,
you know, it's funny though, because the more that the less, I think my opinion of this is, the less that we have this what's in it for me kind of selfish behavior with anything, we end up getting what we want anyway. Totally. And the benefit is that we've allowed ourselves to be open and grow as men, as people as well. So I think that's worth noting too.
Yeah, it's just how it is, you know. I was just thinking again of my story, because I always had agendas, and because I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and then I got rejected a lot, you know, and that was the thing. I was like, oh, well, drugs don't reject me. I'll just fucking stick with that. It's way easier, and then I don't have to deal with all these weird emotions. And like, you know. So it was just like stuff.
I mean, rejection is very, very primal, man. Very primal.
So stuff it all down, and let's not think about that until I did therapy. And I got through my year of therapy where I went clean and sober and vegan and like living in an ashram and all kinds of weird shit. And I'm like, now it's time to actually have a look at this sexual story, because it's now getting dysfunctional. We're at 26, you know, it's like, okay, where am I coming from in a wrong direction or a wrong angle? Or where am I subtly having this agenda that I only talk to women with this agenda because I'm needy? You know, it's like because some part of me is not expressed, you know. So, and this
and what kind of woman am I attracting to fulfill a void that I have?
Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of, that's what got me into sort of tantric sex, and then I also sort of went into the clinical side of sexuality, so I can teach it in schools and all that kind of stuff. But I can do body work and all that kind of stuff, and things as well now. And my need to get anywhere is just very different than most people's. You know, it's it plays in your favor a lot. In the
end. Definitely, man. Well, like I said, man, I think that we could continue this conversation for a long, long time, but we've cracked over an hour and it's felt like it's been 15 minutes. So I think that what we need to do is we need to put a pause on this and get you on for part 2.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
And dive a little bit deeper. What I was thinking actually is it might be cool if we get Marcus on and we'll do a 3-way conversation. I don't know how that will go with a little bit of delay with the internet. We might be talking all over each other. It might be a complete catastrophe, but I think that it'd be pretty cool to get you two and me, you know, having this dialogue around all these topics that we've discussed today, because I think it would be an awesome conversation.
For sure. Yeah, totally down for that. Sounds good.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again so much for your time, Ben. I really appreciate it, mate. And I hope that whoever is going to be watching this got as much value as I got out of it. And I really appreciate you sharing some of your story and some of your journey as well, because, I mean, everyone's got their unique journey and their story, and everyone's story is worth sharing, mate. So I hope that people got as much value out of this as what I did, mate. And you're an incredible human being, mate. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to kind of leave on that note of like vulnerability. It's like, as men, again, back to vulnerability being a superpower, is ask for help. Ask for help. You know, not saying to me, I'm just saying in the group or whatever it is, to guys you trust in your life, people that you love, you know, if there is mental health issues or if there is stuff that you need, because we're so stubborn and stoic and I can do it myself and blah, 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 asking for help can just be a game changer. It can be as simple as that, you know, that we need to learn to be able to be open to receive and to ask, because we can't all do this on our own, you know, and we need things like this where there is an open forum for people to reach out and just go, hey, I'm having troubles with X, Y, Z.
And we weren't designed to go along the journey on our own. It's just as simple as that.
No, we're not.
We're very tribal.
I just literally said the same
thing. We're literally like an advanced chimps running around with iPhones.
Totally. So yeah, and that's just what I wanted to leave with. There's like, yeah, it's okay to ask for help. It's not a weakness. It's never, don't ever perceive it as a weakness, because it's not.
Definitely. So then, if people really resonated with your message and loved what they heard and they want to work with you and want to learn more, where can I point them in the direction? What can they do?
You can definitely hit me up on Facebook, Ben Gair, and also Ben Gair, BenGair.com. There's my website. That's kind of needs a reshuffle at the moment, but at least getting in contact with me is easy enough there.
What I'll do is I'll get you to send me your contact details, and I'll post it down below in the comments so that people can get directly in contact with you. I'll be happy to do that for you, mate.
Totally cool.
All right, brother. Thank you so much again for your time, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime soon for version 2.0 of Ben Gair.
Yeah, anytime, mate. Anytime. No worries.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.